Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and I'm going on a long journey of trying to complete every single Game Boy Advance game in North America. This is the story of the highs, the lows, and all the silly stuff in between for the Game Boy Advance completion experience. This is GB Ace. Game number 10, Duke Nukem Advance. Well guys, I think it's about time to kick some ass and chew some bubblegum. And here's a little secret for you. I'm all out of gum. That's right, Duke Nukem is here for his own personal stint on the Game Boy Advance. And when I drew this game, I was... To be honest, I wasn't sure how to feel about this pull at first. I'm not huge on the first-person shooter genre, but I have gotten some enjoyment out of GoldenEye on the N64, and since I'm not really going against other people in multiplayer here, this in theory shouldn't be too bad. I just wasn't sure how this would feel or control on a handheld, but I guess we'll figure it out because we're on this quest to beat every single one of these Game Boy Advance games, and we'll likely have other first-person shooters in the future as well. Anyway, Duke Nukem Advance was developed by Taurus Games and published by Take-Two Interactive, and it was released on August 13, 2002, so still a relatively early GBA title, all things considered. So, here's the deal for this game. There's just a single-player mode, so obviously we'll be beating that for our completion requirement. There's also multiplayer for this game as well, but obviously we won't be playing that, nor will we need to do anything with that for this challenge. When we select the single-player campaign mode, we immediately get greeted by a difficulty meter, and as per my rules, we will only beat the default difficulty unless more opens up by aiming for the higher levels, which did not seem to be the case here. The default was set on Let's Rock, which was the second easiest of the four options. So, in the words of Duke himself, let's indeed rock as we head into the game. Duke Nukem is an agent that works under military personnel General Graves, and Duke has been tasked with investigating a possible alien infiltration in Area 51. Now, Duke Nukem is not your typical James Bond type of agent, no way in hell. This guy is an absolute unit. A strong, muscular man who has very aggressive and adult tendencies. He's not shy around violence or to get violent, and if anything, he has fun with it, making numerous quips mocking and taunting his opposition, especially after taking them down. I think it's pretty obvious that Duke is a bit of a parody of the typical action hero of sorts, kind of like a more adult and over-the-top G.I. Joe, if that makes sense. And for this game, we're going to follow him along as he tries to uncover the alien conspiracy and beat them back in the process. So, like I said before, this is a first-person shooter. You move the D-pad, the face buttons control your shoot and jump functions, and you actually use the L and R buttons to strafe left and right, perfect for avoiding very obvious projectile attacks or needing to look face forward down a new hallway. Here's where things get a little awkward though. If you want to manually aim, like aim your crosshair at specific locations, you have to hold both the L and R buttons at the same time, and then you can manually move your cursor around to aim. Now, I understand there are limited buttons on the GBA handheld, but this definitely felt a bit cumbersome, especially in those instances where enemies were in different elevations, as you pretty much had to risk potentially getting shot at while you aimed your cursor up and down. There is a small degree of auto-aiming, where if you are at least aiming in the direction of your foe, you'll still get the hit on them, but it wasn't always reliable for me, admittedly. Also, if you want to switch weapons, you have to hold the select button and press L and R to cycle through your weapons, which can also lead to very noticeable halt in gameplay. Again, I understand limited buttons, but still, it did make some sections, especially late game, more annoying for me. Also, be wary of the auto-switch weapon feature, which you can alter in the game options on the pause menu. It's default on, which means as you go through the game, your weapon will switch out whenever you get a new one, and whenever you run out of ammo. This honestly wouldn't be too bad, but due to the weird weapon order of the game, sometimes you can switch from one gun to your pipe bombs, which are obviously not as reliable if you're in the middle of a heated firearm fight with a bunch of enemies. I still had it on for a majority of the game, but if you are someone who does better at managing it yourself, by all means, go ahead and go for it. Anyway, the basic goal for each level is to complete a mission objective and make it to the exits. Sometimes the objective is the exit though, so in those cases, it's just to get to the end of each level. Very simple. Heck, I don't even think you can fail these objectives either. If you get to a point where you're heading to the exit of a level without completing the objective, the game will prevent you from going in that direction anyway until you complete your task first, so a relatively on-rail structure as far as completion goes. While you are doing this, you'll have to navigate a rather big map and defeat a bunch of enemies along the way. Also, you'll find doors that you won't be able to open unless you find a key or activate a switch, so pay special attention to your surroundings and make sure you investigate and explore every corner and nook and cranny. There is a map you can look at on the pause screen if you want to get some kind of direction going, but it's admittedly not super detailed, so hopefully you can make enough sense of it when you're looking at it. Anyway, let's get right on to mission number 1, where we are apparently investigating a mysterious facility occupied by the enemy, and we need to gather alien intelligence. Duke is stranded here with only his Desert Eagle handgun, but because he's an absolute badass, he's not too worried in the least bit, as he'll just get some new toys from the enemies. The first level was relatively easy to manage, especially considering we only had to deal with the weakest and most manageable grunt soldiers. We did immediately get a new weapon though in the form of the shotgun, and as you might expect, it fires slowly but packs a really nice punch, perfect for taking out alien scum. While I was investigating the area and looking for a key, I also managed to find a nice little hidden alcove that had some armor to build up my defense. These secrets, as the game calls them, are basically little rooms that have some extra goodies for Duke if you can find them, and the game actually keeps track of the ones you found by showing you a status screen at the end of each level. Also, if you do retro achievements, there's achievements for getting every secret in every level, while also killing every enemy too. I personally won't be aiming for this, but try to get a few of them along the way just for fun. Eventually, I found the alien data disk hidden in a small corner of the room, and made my way out of the area to complete my first mission. Pretty easy stuff, I must say. The second mission was also relatively simple too, but I suppose it's still very early on in the game, so that's not really saying much. This time we need to find an alien laptop that we can use to upload the data disk we found. This next area was a little harder to navigate with more rooms and teleporters that warp between different sections, but again, if you focus on one area at a time and clear out each section consistently, it'll be pretty easy. Also, collect and maintain as much ammo as you can, and I'll explain why later. I also found a neat little area that gave me a bunch of small boosts for my armor. However, the game did not recognize this as a secret for some reason, which I thought was kinda weird. Anyway, we find the laptop and discover that the aliens are trying to manipulate their own DNA to create super alien hybrids, which does not sound very good for us, so we need to take action. And finally, on my way out of this area, this happened. Oh god! Oh no, I shot an alien. In my defense, they shouldn't have, just appeared right there. I actually got worried I'd failed the mission here, but thankfully no. This is just a new enemy, an annoying alien creature that won't just attack indirectly with a powerful laser attack, but can also revive enemies if they happen to be near a dead enemy body. So take care of them as soon as possible if you see one around, and if you don't want to deal with dumb alien zombies along the way. Anyway, after turning the corner and taking out a few more enemies, we rush down the subway tunnel and finish another mission. Mission number 3 starts with us exploring a secret underground railway system the aliens have been using to transport troops and their supplies from right under our noses. This does not please the Duke, so he responds with his series' most popular quip. It's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum. And I'm all out of gum. Something only a true badass would say. Anyway, once again, another relatively easy mission as we just walk around, take out more enemies, and shut down the railway system for good. On our way out though, we head into a creepy looking cavern place and come face to face with a rather disgusting creature that looks like a hybrid between an alien and some kind of weird spider or scorpion thing. I guess that means it's boss time as we try to take out this abomination. Realistically, this boss isn't too hard. It just moves in a circle formation around the room, and all you have to do is just strafe around and shoot it while dodging its attacks. Heck, you could probably just go in the center of the room and just move back and forth as you target the creepy beast. Not to mention that you will be rewarded with a rocket launcher as well as a further upgrade of your ammunition and arsenal. As you might expect, this weapon is lethal to your foes, but it has very limited ammo and can be a major threat to yourself as well. In fact, during this fight, I shot a rocket too close to my position, and the resulting blast took away pretty much all of my armor and more than half of my health, making me nothing but a sweet, squishy treat for my opposition, as it was able to take out the rest of my health, killing me in the process, and give me my first death of the playthrough. Unfortunately, this meant that I had to start the entire level over again, because yeah, there are no checkpoints here. While this was annoying, at least there is no extra life or continue system, which means we could just infinitely play this until we finally win, so that was at least nice to figure out. Anyway, I played this level over again and gave the boss another attempt, playing much more safely and carefully this time. It did work out for me though, as we were able to take down and escape, finishing the mission and the first part of this game. Even though we've taken down this part of the aliens' operation, there's still plenty of alien activity around the globe, so Duke decides to jump into a teleporter and go to another major alien base, this one located in Egypt, inside the pyramid base of Amun. Duke is now ready to walk like an Egyptian and deliver some max pain to the enemy. Don't worry, Duke wasn't infringing any copyright here. Apparently Max Payne and Duke Nukem both share similar producer credits, so this is totally within reason. The Egyptian levels were actually pretty cool. Definitely more maze-like in appearance, and tougher enemies were starting to show up, but stuff still felt pretty manageable. The most notable enemy upgrades were the pig enemies again, but this time they wore black suits and had MP5s, which were more like rapid-fire machine guns, which, hey, this meant we had a new weapon to play with once we did beat one of them. Of course, as expected, this also meant that the ammo depleted a lot faster, so we had to be careful of that as well. Which again, may I remind you, try to keep and hoard as much ammo as possible. Again, you'll find out why later, I promise. I also ran into a really annoying hovering enemy as well, which could fire a really strong and explosive blast. They don't use these enemies too often, but they can be quite dangerous, especially if you're low on body armor or just health in general. After a bit of exploring, a bit of getting lost, and a bit of fun with Duke's audio clips, we make our way to the inner sanctum and complete the mission. In this next mission, we are tasked with locating and getting more information about the alien's hibernation system. This level is a bit more open, which is good from a not getting lost perspective, but definitely harder from an avoiding enemy fire perspective, as there were many times we were kind of sitting ducks for our alien opposition. We did find some pipe bombs in this level, which were kind of cool, I guess. Basically, they are bombs you can throw and detonate on enemies, good for clearing out small little pockets of troops that might be behind a wall or something. I didn't find them too helpful right now, but who knows, they may come in clutch later. We'll just have to wait and see. At one point, while looking around and avoiding the various pools of nacho cheese located in this section, we discover a conveyor belt with various smashing obstructions. This looked freaking dangerous, and I was scared this would be a one-hit kill if I ended up below one of them when descending, but thankfully they were pretty easy to manage if you just hold forward when they came down. That way, you immediately go under and past them when they rise. We find some schematics for the alien's hibernation system on these platforms, and while intelligence does some research on the blueprints, we get directed to a control center, marking our next destination. For this next mission, we need to drain the pumps that go to the alien's hibernation system at the control center. Now, this mission was actually a bit more difficult than the last couple of missions, and it was at this point that I kinda started realizing why, and where this game's difficulty was going to start setting in and coming into play, although I wouldn't fully comprehend this until much, much later. You see, every time you complete a mission, everything you have carries over to the next mission. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything, regardless of how full or empty it may be. This means that all health, armor, and ammo carry over, so if you finish a stage with a lot of ammo and some neat weaponry, don't worry, you'll still have it for the next stage. Likewise though, if you finish the stage with only 5 health remaining and no armor, well, you're going to start the next stage with only 5 health and no armor. Now, when I said I didn't fully comprehend this yet, I was under the impression that the game was at least pretty generous with ammo drops, and at this point, it still was. So even though I started this next stage with only 40 health, I at least could go on for a little bit and try to mitigate my damage so that I could get some health pickups along the path, basically by getting good, as the obnoxious toxic gamer would say. Trust me though, I've said this before and I'll probably say this a few more times in the course of this video, but do not forget to replenish and store up on ammo. You might be fine now, but later that could come back and bite you, just saying. Anyway, I had a hard time getting a good run going on this stage at first, and it doesn't help that in the first few rooms, they have some of the newer enemies which can really damage you if you aren't accurate and decisive with your shots. I died a couple of times here, but eventually was able to get something going, even collecting a few keys in the process and getting a little more familiar with the room layouts. However, I just did not have a lot of health to deal with too many enemies at once, and every time I got a health pack, it seemed like one hit from the enemies would put me at that same threshold again, if not even lower. I eventually had a run that was good enough to make it to the end of the stage, and when I got there, I was greeted by a giant enemy crab, and well, if you were a gamer during Sony's 2006 E3 conference, you should know what we gotta do here.
So here's this giant enemy crab. Attack its weak point for massive damage.
So yeah, we turn off the pumps, which in turn activates the smasher, and we lure the crab right in there, taking another victory against the alien army, and officially having crab cakes for dinner. However, it seems like there was a small miscalculation here by Duke, as taking out the boss activates a self-destruct mechanism in their hideout, which means if we aren't fast enough, we wouldn't just be losing one world wonder in the pyramids, but also a second in the form of Duke Nukem. And before anyone corrects him on that, no, he's right. You just didn't pay close enough attention in history class. Anyway, the last level of Egypt is actually a timed level where we have 2 minutes to escape the exploding pyramid. Along the way, you'll have to deal with enemies and a really obnoxious shaking effect, but considering you only have 2 minutes, it's a safe assumption that the level itself isn't too long. So just try to keep moving and only take out enemies if they seem worthwhile to take out. I did take a death once here because I ran out of time, but I wasn't too far from the exit, so I was able to do it on my second attempt pretty easily. Duke escapes from another alien teleporter and finds himself on the streets of Sydney, Australia. Oh boy, is Mr. Nukem about to take the aliens on a voyage down under? I guess so. But before we get too deep into alien extermination, we need to meet up with an undercover agent who was last heard from in a nightclub around here. So we take the streets to see what we can find. This area honestly seemed a bit more open than the last few levels we've done, and not really in a bad way either. I felt like I was just in general doing a bit better with mitigating damage, and the enemies weren't as congested in the smaller areas either, which in general helped me out a lot. I also found a new weapon, another shotgun, but this one with 4 chambers instead of just 1. It uses bullets from the same pile as the other shotgun, but wastes 4 pieces of ammunition, as opposed to the other, which is only 1, so definitely not very cost effective, although it does really put the damage on to compensate. I still recommend sticking to the first shotgun though, just because it's still pretty powerful considering. We make it to the nightclub with relatively little issue and run into the undercover agent. She gives us a key to the opera house, which seems to be the alien's base in the area, which means it's about time for this place's final number. Before we gain access to the opera house though, we have to sneak in from a nearby Chinese restaurant, as well as defeat an enemy sentry that is on patrol there, which we do manage pretty dang easily since he was just right there in the kitchen of a next door burger joint. After that, we enter the restaurant, find the passage we need to get into the opera house, and survive just enough gunfire to get there on very low health once again. Oh boy, let's hope this isn't as difficult as the last time this happened. Thankfully, this next level wasn't too bad, despite being the final area of this world and under the low health restrictions I just talked about. There were plenty of enemies and they did rough me up a few times, but it seemed like I was able to stock up just enough along the way to stay in good shape. In the Opera House, though, I found a very interesting weapon that is kind of worth talking about, and that is the fabled Shrink Ray. This is a special type of weapon that uses energy packs as its ammo, and when you use it on an enemy, they will turn into a small little action figure of sorts. In this form, they are not very threatening, but this period is temporary, so make sure you quickly shoot them with another gun, or walk up and step on them to remove them from existence. This gun, while cool in nature, is rather inefficient, because it does kind of require a two-step process to work. Not to mention, it's kind of slow on the activation too, so probably not something you want to use in a room filled with a bunch of enemies. Plus, it'll also share ammo with other special weapons in the game, so keep that in mind. Although, remember my advice from earlier? Keeping ammo in this game is very important, so if you can get away with using a gun like this through certain sections, it will allow you to keep some of your other, more practical weapons stocked for future use. Just saying, something to consider. After a bit of sleuthing, we find out the weapon is on the roof of the Opera House, and we need to find and disarm it as soon as possible. So, we work our way through the joint, even getting a little lost in the process. We access some teleporters located in the band pits, and find our way to where the weapon is supposedly located. This weapon is apparently capable of accelerating global warming, so we need to stop its use at all costs. Unfortunately, after pressing a button, thinking it was the off switch, Duke accidentally turns on the weapon and it gets ready to fire. Thankfully, not all hope is lost though, as the weapon's shutdown procedure can override the weapon. But once again, we are timed to flip 4 additional switches in only a period of a minute and a half. This doesn't deter Duke as he responds with the following. Tick tock, these aliens can suck my... Duke, get a move on! Come on, Duke, let's try to keep it PG here, please. So, once again, we're on limited time, and damn, I really wish these levels wouldn't shake so much. It messes with your movement and is not exactly pleasant to look at or play with. Thankfully, though, the switches themselves aren't too far out of the way, so it's relatively easy to get this task completed. With the weapon stopped, Duke has one more order of business left, so we go further into the HQ and find a heavily armed alien, whom I named Tom Battlelord, and proceed to have another boss fight. And honestly, he was pretty easy. He seemed to have a pretty eccentric projectile attack, and I just used my souped up shotgun to take him out very quickly. It took a lot of hits, but I mean, look at him, go figure. But I went through this pretty much unscathed, which is the more important thing. After taking him down, we leave, give the clearance for our HQ to come and dismantle everything, and then we decide to take matters into our own hands as we head for the alien's main base of operations. Damn, Duke Nukem seriously means business, doesn't he? Now, at this point in the playthrough, I had been playing this game for 2 hours, and we were already starting the final world of the game. However, just because it didn't take too long to get to this point, these last set of levels were quite a bit longer than the others, and you can bet that things are gonna get a bit more difficult as well. So we'll need to stay on our A game if we hope to make it through this final gauntlet. So, let's get to it. For this first mission, well, we aren't actually tasked with anything as our communications with headquarters are currently jammed, but we decide to take it on ourselves to destroy a bunch of alien eggs that are stored in this ship, which obviously makes sense. We don't want any more of these creeps being hatched to do us harm, right? Now, the eggs themselves aren't too threatening from a distance. If you get too close to them though, they will retaliate with a small projectile shot, so be wary of that. But from a distance, as long as you don't delay too long, you can generally get rid of them pretty quickly. While I was going around cracking eggs though, I found another special weapon along the same lines as the Shrink Ray from earlier, the Freeze Gun. This weapon works in pretty much the same fashion as the Shrink Ray, although I'd almost argue that it's a bit better, just because it, freezes enemies and prevents them from shooting at you. However, also like the Shrink Ray, you have to be quick with walking up to the enemies and breaking the ice with your melee attacks. Otherwise, they will unfreeze and continue attacking you. Not something that you want to deal with. As for the level itself, meh. The layout itself wasn't too bad, but damn, I did not care for the visual design choices made here. These caves did not look very pretty, and everything just kind of blended together in a very weird way. It also didn't help that I ended up missing an egg early on, and I had to backtrack through the rooms a couple of times to find it. And then later, when I was close to the end, I ended up jumping off a platform to avoid enemy fire, putting me a couple of rooms back in the process. I didn't die, thankfully, but it definitely slowed me down a lot. Also, much like the Egypt levels, a lot of these rooms were very compact, and they tended to stick a lot of enemies in these small rooms, which made it very easy to take damage. I guess it's only fitting that they start upping the ante at the very end of the game, I suppose. The next level was pretty much more of the same, as the alien eggs start to become a common enemy like everything else in the game at this point. This mission wasn't too bad, even if I did take an early death in my first attempt, but thankfully this level featured a couple of rooms with very generous health pickups, so that kinda kept me going on still. However, it was at this point that I started realizing that my ammo amounts were starting to run quite a bit low compared to earlier. The inclusion of more enemies, many of which that take multiple hits to take down, were really cutting into my reserves, and I found myself using my Python quite a bit more, just so I could try to save up weaponry for my shotgun and MP5. Eventually, we shut off an alien cloaking device, which fixes our communication problem from earlier, and also reveals the alien ship to our home base, so now we can get some more clear-cut objectives. Our next objective is to hack into the alien mainframe, but before that can happen, we end up meeting another new enemy in the form of a small insect or spider-like creature. These guys don't do too much damage, but they have a very small hitbox and stay pretty close to the ground, so they were a little annoying to take out admittedly. But yeah, pretty much more of the same as we stumble around these mazes of rooms and try to find anything that resembles any sort of a mission objective, while also doing our best to save what ammo we have left. I actually got kinda lost here again, and when I finally found the right room with the mission objective, I got absolutely lit up, almost dying at the very end of the stage. Now, while it's great I survived this did open up a bit of a different problem, as I was starting the next stage with only 30 health and not much armor, meaning some strong enemies could absolutely destroy me if I wasn't careful. Mission number 4 is getting to something a little closer to Duke's heart, because now it's time to save some lovely ladies. So, let's look around and see what we can find, huh? Now, I absolutely hated this level at first. There were so many random switches that would just open random doors or compartments from behind that had enemies, and I felt like no matter what I did, I was going to be on the receiving end of some nasty enemy bites. It was also getting to a point where my ammo was ridiculously low for all of my weapons, and by the end, I knew that I was going to have to start dipping into my miscellaneous weapons like the pipe bombs and ray guns. After a bit of exploring, I found the first girl I was looking for, and it seemed to be the same person we rescued back at Sydney. Although, slight plot twist, this is actually her clone, so say hello to Jenny number 2, which means 3 more Jennies we need to rescue. Mission number 5 was brutal. As I stated in the last mission, our ammo was not at a good place, and I kinda wished I used my special weapons more because I literally had nothing good for these first few rooms. Heck, there were 2 big hallways close to the beginning that had progression, but had numerous enemies, many hiding behind walls waiting to strike, and it just felt like there was nothing I could do without taking damage, and I pretty much had no armor as well. Even when I had a good run in one of the rooms, I either had to go to the other room to get the key card, or I would have gotten the key card in the first room, but felt pressured to enter the other one to at least try and stock up on more ammo because I needed that desperately. And you want to know the worst part? This was just the beginning. This level had many rooms, both big and small, that were just filled to the brim with enemies, and every time I got through one, I progressed really slowly in fear of the next one. It took me around 35 minutes to finally get a good run of this down, but even when I did, I had less health than what I started with, and still around the same amount of ammunition to boot. Things were not looking good. We found Jenny number 3, and she was perhaps a bit too descriptive with what the aliens had been doing with her, and Duke didn't really seem to be that bothered by it either. Seriously guys, please, keep it PG. Well, if you thought Mission 5 was brutal, wait until you see Mission 6, because this was honestly even more difficult. And what made it worse? I was only starting this mission on 8 health. This was gonna be a rough one. Thankfully though, before I started, I did save over a different file with this run, just in the interest of keeping my previous save to return to if I needed to try that level again to get more health and ammo. But I figured I would give this mission a shot anyway, just in the interest of seeing how far I could get. Spoiler alert, it didn't go very well. This level opens up immediately to a wide open room with lots of different enemies and a giant lava pit in the center. There was no way in hell this was going to work. For me anyway. I'm sure a more experienced player could have handled this more easily, but I am not an expert at this genre and I had only started playing this about 4 hours ago. I gave it a few handfuls of attempts, even making it decently far in one of my runs, but I needed a little more health and assurance to at least get a run going more consistently. Even though I absolutely hated going back to the previous level, after 25 minutes I was just tired of throwing Duke into a giant meat grinder, and after an additional 25 minutes of redoing the previous level, I returned to mission number 6, this time with over 50 health, and even some armor as well. Ammo was just as bad, if not a little worse, but hey, at this point I made peace with the fact that no matter what, this was going to be a challenge, so I may as well give it a shot. I gave the next level another couple of attempts, and before I knew it, I had another good run going. I was really far into the level, and I noticed that they were really trying to spam the hell out of these enemies, sometimes by putting several copies of the same enemy in the same room, almost like a final test of sorts. I had a feeling I was pretty close to the end, so at one point I just decided to make a break for it when I saw a health pack on the ground. I grabbed the health as I tried to avoid the enemy aliens, turned the corner, and to my absolute delight, I ran into Jenny number 4, ending the mission. From Jenny 4, we learned that, well, Duke, you're my hero. I thought it was for sure I was going to be used for an alien sex farm. When this is over, we'll make a stop at Duke's amusement park and ride the... I can't say it. Yeah, there's no keeping it PG anymore after that. Sorry, folks. Mission number 7 was... Well, to be honest, this mission was actually much easier than the last two. I don't know if the last 2 hours just helped me prepare for this a lot better or not, but just the layout and the enemy placements of this mission didn't seem as bad as they were in the previous ones. So this was a very welcome change for me. In fact, I even managed to find a couple of crucial armor pickups, which took my health to over 100, a threshold I hadn't been at since what felt like the Sydney levels. We make it to the ship's cooling unit, turn it off in an effort to have the entire ship completely melt down, and after getting the orders to find Jenny number 5 and get the hell out of here, we are interrupted by the alien head honcho, who decides to secure the capture of the final Jenny and challenge Duke to one last fight. So of course, naturally, we have to accept this challenge. The final battle takes place in a circular room with a giant pool of lava in the middle, and unfortunately our foe decides to spend all of his time in there as well, meaning we need to be very precise and accurate with our shots if we want to take him down before we run out of ammo. Early on, I ended up taking a lot of damage with backfire from my rocket launcher, so in addition to being careful with aiming, I also need to constantly be moving to avoid taking damage from the boss's own attacks. I stick with one weapon, move in a circular path around the arena, use the weapon until it runs out of ammo, and keep cycling around until either the boss goes down, or I completely run out of ammo myself. And forget using melee attacks, because before I know it, I'm within one shot of dying, and any attempt at going for the kill in that fashion would surely mean certain death in my court, if not by the boss, but by the lava surrounding him. I go through every single weapon I have, and the boss seriously isn't going down. I'm literally down to just my pipe bombs now, and not only are they super awkward to use, but also incredibly inefficient at dealing damage to the guy, because he needs to be in the explosion radius to even take damage in the first place. And I'm constantly moving, so he's already going to be changing his movement based on my position. This felt like an absolute dud of a take, but I kept going until my literal last pipe bomb was thrown, and, well... Did I seriously? I can't believe I pulled that off. Not only did I kill him with my last pipe bomb, the last piece of ammo I had, but I also did it with a single unit of health remaining. So I was basically a skeleton at this point. The keycard I needed to continue unfortunately fell in the lava though, but thankfully you have a couple of frames to jump into the lava and jump out before you take damage. So I was able to secure the key and finish the level with the rescue of Jenny number 5. And well, that's it, right? Well, unfortunately we're not quite out of the woods yet. We do have one last level to do, but thankfully it's just an escape level like the one we did back in Egypt. So we don't have to beat any enemies if we don't absolutely have to. However, I'm still at 1 health, and I have nothing to defend myself with. So the first thing I need to do is make it to a health pack before taking any sort of damage whatsoever. And thankfully, we spawn right in front of a health pack, being guarded by a spider enemy. Yeah, I really wasn't expecting this little guy to be the final obstacle of this game, but here we are. I take many, 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 many deaths in an effort to get this health pack. Once again, the shaky controls and camera not doing me any favors, and I think I even died a couple of times due to just random ship explosions too. But eventually, I grabbed the health pack and actually can make progress now. I don't do a lot of killing in this mission, as I'm just running on pure adrenaline and desire to finish this game at this point. And really, this level isn't too hard either. It's just kind of long in comparison to the other timed levels we've had to do so far. But it's pretty linear for the most part, and as long as you keep moving, you should make it out to the teleportation systems and beam yourself out of Dodge before the ship explodes. The aliens go down, the world is saved, and Duke goes down, gets down to business as we finish up the game and the credits start to roll. Game complete. Wow, just wow. What an experience this was. And you know, I actually really enjoyed it. The ending was brutal, don't get me wrong, and I wish I would have picked up on some of the intricacies of this game sooner, like the whole health and ammo carrying over system, as I would have been way more careful from the beginning if I did, but up until the last 3 or 4 missions, I was really enjoying myself, and next to GoldenEye, this was probably the most fun I've ever had playing a first-person shooter. The general plot and presentation is incredibly silly and over the top, but that's kind of the point. Duke Nukem is an absolute parody of a typical action hero, and because they make that painfully obvious, they can just have fun with the game and focus on the gameplay, which is generally pretty good all things considered. Translation to the Game Boy Advance was definitely a bit rough in spots, no denying that, and that was largely my biggest complaint in playing this, but hey, it controls and feels way more polished than the SNES version of Doom, something else I played recently, so I'm at least a little more forgiving of the devs for trying their best with this one, because really, I can imagine a game like this on this particular system being a really hard sell, and they honestly made it work pretty well. I'm also just not that crazy about the carryover system in the first place, and would have much preferred how FPS gameplay is handled in other games like GoldenEye, where each mission just gives you a specific amount of starting ammo and firepower at the start of each mission, and you don't have to worry about how you end or start each mission transition, and you are just challenged on your aptitude for that particular mission in question. That's just me and my preference though. But yeah, the game plays good, the game looks fine, the sound quality and presentation was pretty solid too, with Duke's sound clips being easily one of the game's best and funniest features. It was honestly a pretty good time. Unfortunately, this is the only Duke Nukem game on this system, so we are saying our goodbyes to the gumshoer and ass kicker for good for this challenge, but at least he gave us something good to remember him by. This will not be our last FPS on this system though. In fact, we may actually have one pretty soon, according to our current game list, so we'll have to see how that goes when we get to it. For the game's enjoyability, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. It was a fun game and I really enjoyed myself despite not being a huge fan of the genre. The ending stretch of the game definitely got pretty rough and difficult though, which did hold this game back a bit from getting a 4. but it was still pretty close to breaking that barrier. For game difficulty, I'm sticking with a 3 out of 5. Even though the ending stretch is tough, you do have multiple save slots you can utilize to back up your data in case you get a bad run and want to try an earlier level again. And I'd argue the bigger challenge is just getting used to the control and interface of playing this on a Game Boy Advance system. And even then, I wouldn't say it's unplayable, just hard to master efficiently. But yeah, that was Duke Nukem Advance. I hope you guys enjoyed the summary, and I hope you stay tuned for the next one. And speaking of which, let's take a sneak peek at what game will be next for this challenge. Okay guys, thank you for watching this summary. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a comment and or like on the video, as those will really help me in these videos out. And stay tuned for future summaries of this series. If you also want to watch full playthroughs of these games for this challenge, check out the video description for a full playlist of everything that's been uploaded and exported so far. And if you're curious about what I'm playing right now for the challenge, be sure to stop by my Twitch channel to see what my current progress is. Just be warned, I'll be a lot further ahead of where we are for these summaries, so keep that in mind. This has been SlimKirby in the GBA series, and I'll talk to you fine people next time. Later, folks.